Alrighty. We're gonna start by reviewing the minutes of November 17th, our last meeting. Is there anyone who had any suggestions for the minutes or anything they wanted to raise, any concerns? Did everyone get a chance to look at the minutes and feels good about being able to vote to approve them? Okay, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
A second? Thank you, Kip. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes from November 17th, 2021, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, wonderful. Mimi, did you vote or did you abstain?
I'm abstaining because I missed that meeting.
Awesome.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Madam Chairman, with your permission and permission of the board, I'd like to, if I could, move a line item on the agenda, line item 4, and make it line item 9, because it's rather a unique topic, and it's these are most about contracts and housing and so on and so forth. And item 4 is somewhat unique, so I'd like to, if no one has any objection, or Madam Chairman, if you have no objection, I'd like to make it item 9.
You mean the executive session?
Yes, exactly. Executive session concerning the CPC.
The only reason why I have it there versus later is because I am going to be presenting information on the budget that is contingent on if that executive session happens or not. So I just need to make sure that that happens before we talk about the budget. So if we move 4, we're also moving 5.
Well, whatever you want to do.
Is there a particular item from later on in the agenda that you're hoping to get to sooner?
Well, yeah, mine. But besides that, no. I was just thought that I thought item 4 was just its own item. It didn't rely on going into item 5. We have to remember that when we go into executive session, we have to take a vote that we're going into an executive session.
Yeah.
And we're coming out of and we got to vote that we are going to be coming out of executive session into open session. So we got to be mindful of that.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, and we'll talk more about the executive session when we get there. So the reason why it's on the agenda, trying to address folks' concerns from last time. All right, I'd like us to move forward with the agenda as is. I'd like us to move into number 2, which is just greeting and welcome to the interested community representatives. So we have Francisca Nunez here. We also have Maribel here. Maribel Ortiz, right? Did I get it right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Maribel, do you want to take a few moments to introduce yourself?
Actually, before we do that, Madam Chair, unless this happened before I joined the meeting, I should introduce my replacement, Mr. John Kelly, who I see with us here.
So yeah, I think this is also a good time for us to do that as well, because I think there's a lot of shifts in membership that's sort of happening currently. So yes, I think it's a good time to do that too. Do you want to introduce John Kelly?
Yes.
That should be very short, Bibi.
I will make it very short. Mr. Kelly is the chair of the planning board, and he is replacing me as the representative to the CPAC. In fact, he has already replaced me, and I'm just here to backseat drive for a meeting or two and provide any information he may need as the meeting progresses.
Okay, lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to say I'm anxious to kind of be part of this group. I've heard a lot of good things about you. A few of you I've known. I know I met many of you over the past many years. I've been on the planning board for close to 20 years. So I guess I joined a lot more hair and a lot darker, but I look forward to being part of this group.
Lovely. How long have you been a part of the planning board, John?
I've been on the planning board about 20 years. I'll finish 20 years in June. So,
Wow, they'll make you a cake.
Yeah.
Better be a good cake. That's a lot of years. John, how long have you lived in Holyoke?
I'm a Holyoker, born and bred, very active in the community. I've been retired. I worked 44 and a half years in banking and financial services. So I was on many boards of the city of Holyoke, and you know, like all of you, probably I love Holyoke and want to see us move it forward.
Yes, I appreciate that. So we have some shifts happening in membership. So we have John Kelly stepping in to be the representative from the planning board. We also have, of course, some shifts happening with city council and with Parks and Rec. So we will have a new city council rep coming on in January. We will also have a new rep from Parks and Rec. And we also have a community spot open, and KIPS is opening as well. And so we have two folks who are here to join us today. So Francisco Nunez and Maribel Ortiz are going through the process. They have submitted their resumes and letters of intent, and public service has not been able to take it up yet in committee, but they've assured me that they will be able to take it up in January so that we can fill our spots and have a full committee, which will be really exciting. Maribel, do you want to take a few moments to introduce yourself too?
Yes, I am. My name is Maribel Ortiz. I work here at the Holyoke Health Center. I work for a residency program from NYU. It's it's dentists that they want to do their residence, their specialty in pediatrics. I've been living in Holyoke for 26 years. I raised my two kids in here, and I'm very excited to be involved in any decisions to try to make Holyoke better. That's what I'm here.
Yes, and Francisca Nunez has been joining us the last few meetings as she's going through this process of, hopefully joining as a community representative. So welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining us. It's really great to have you here.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to move into item number 3, which is an update on current and past projects. There's a lot going on in terms of past and current projects. So we've made some good progress, which feels really good. So I just want to state that there's been a lot of making our way through in terms of contracts, in terms of extensions, and there's still a lot to handle. Sometimes it feels overwhelming in terms of there's a lot of things that happened with the pandemic where things really slowed down. So we have a lot of contracts that now need extensions, right? Or need addendums or need shifts. There's a lot of information that we have to either vote on here or move forward to city council. Is my internet okay? I feel like I'm unstable.
I hear you fine.
Okay.
I can hear you.
All of you sometimes freeze and I get a little worried. Let me know if suddenly you can't hear me or I've frozen in some really contorted expression. All right. So to begin with, we're going to do an update from the Contract Subcommittee. So the Contract Subcommittee met. I'm going to turn this over to Mike Falsetti, the chair of the subcommittee, to give an update on the Scott Tower project and contract, and the fire truck contract, and then the Wayfinders contract. And Mike, feel free to bug me about any details if you want me to chime in.
Actually, the to get the easier one out of the way, Madam Chairman and my fellow committee members, the fire truck contract was approved. It was okay. No real major problems. The Wayfinders contract was a little involved, and perhaps Amy may want to give us an update this evening, any latest funding, because of the nature of the funding of Wayfinders and the state and the amount of time it took and the extensions they're looking for seems to be developing as we speak. So I can only say that we're holding the subcommittee just wanted to hold off until we hear more about what the folks from Wayfinders have to say about their funding source and how it's impacting their extension and what direction they want to go to, depending upon us as a committee and their financial needs as that particular project goes about. So we kind of hold that in abeyance a little bit. Again, Amy, with the chair's permission, if you have anything to add regarding the Wayfinders contract, or Mimi, actually.
Recording in progress.
And James Linfield is also here. So when we looked at that contract, the main issue that we ran into right away was that it named a funding deadline that had already passed. And when we reached out to James Linfield, they said, actually, no, we did not have it by that time. We're still looking for it. But we think that it's going to be named within the next week or two. But even if it's named within the next week or two, we still run into an issue in the contract that even though the contract's not yet executed, it's naming a deadline that the project already can't satisfy. So we're trying to figure out what needs to happen at the contract as a result. And it's likely that we'll have to go back to the city council in order to ask for an extension and be able to shift the scope of the timeline on that project as a result before we can finalize the contract and start signing it. James, Mr. Linfield, do you want to add anything?
No, and as you know, my predecessor left when this was all worked out, and we were unfortunately I felt like the transition didn't happen as well as it could have to me, and I expressed that to you all as well. We are, at this point, we are involved in the state, they call it the mini round. So there's a full round in January. Either you are awarded, turned down, or are allowed, you find out that you could be involved in this mini round, which we did submit in September. And we are presently waiting. We were told that the beginning to mid at latest December would be their decision date. I did share something with Amy the other day, something redacted on another email where, DHCD mentioned that, they are still processing these. They normally, you don't hear much once you submit, so that I had anything I was kind of surprised to offer, that they at least mentioned in an email as an aside that we understand that and we shall make decisions very soon. It's all I have from them at this point. We're highly confident. They state and understands all the support we've gotten from the city. And this is essentially a phase 2 of everything that we've already done in the Library Commons area. We're confident, but I can't get anything but hope and prayers at the moment on to whether when a decision would come, and it could happen. I sit and hit refresh on my email quite often as of late. I think there was a discussion about an extension. If we, and I just would say is if there was a decision made that I would have to reapply, that would mean that I don't have this funding that they're making this decision on. If they make this decision not to fund us in this round, I immediately, and I don't even want to bring this up, I immediately go into the current year's round, which is a January 13th submission. And I would then be entering the round without your support if there isn't a decision to extend. And I know this just adds to your paperwork and level and votes, and I can appreciate what it takes to do it, but I would implore an extension versus a reapplication, or plead for an extension. I throw myself on the mercy of the CPC.
I think one of the problems that we have is around, we created contracts. I think I understand why we did it to start. But I think where we currently stand as a society coming out of a pandemic, and also I think the things that we now understand, particularly around the complexity of funding for housing projects, means I think that the way that we were constructing contracts potentially doesn't work. In that we were creating really specific deadlines that had to be met, where we had like a 3 or 6 month option for extension just at our discretion in the board. And then beyond that, it would be like for up to 6 months or up to a year if the city council approved it. And I think I know why we did that. But what we're running into now is that we have, I think, 5 projects that have really gone way beyond the scope of that. And I'm wondering if there's a way that we could, in fact, go to the city council with an order that instead of doing what we have been doing, which is, hey, this one project needs an extension, can you grant it? And then we would have to create an addendum to the contract, right? Because it's actually even beyond what we said initially was in the scope of the contract for the timeline. I'm wondering if it makes instead to almost try to put forward a blanket order with a list of project names and ask the city council if we would have the capacity to instead have discretion on providing deadlines.
Yeah, I think all of that is true. And I think we have to ask probably the new city council how they feel about it. You know, our practice, I think, evolved around the fact that the city council was initially very cautious about authorizing, you know, the expenditure of 6 figures on something without a hard guarantee that the money would come back to us on a date certain if the funding didn't come through. And obviously funding has been delayed on everything. So, you know, I think the upside is if we do have to go back to them and ask for help on this, I would think that they could process it very quickly. But it would be nice if we didn't have to constantly find ourselves in this situation. And maybe we had more flexibility than within 6 months of what we think this round will produce. And, you know, I would think that it would be a good thing to try to craft that kind of approach.
What do others think? I just know that we keep coming up against this again and again.
Well, we do on this particular board, but I would certainly agree with what BB just said, because, you know, COVID has just backed everything up, and it's created a lot of different challenges and timelines. We find that with different organizations and groups within the city. So I think it would make sense to do them as a kind of a full grouping, then try to go back individually for each project and, you know, just get that okay for the new council probably.
Is this something that we would vote on as a committee before sending to the city council?
Madam Chairman, if you don't mind, would you want to put that as a blanket 1-year extension for all projects as we speak? Or is there 8 months, 12 months, 14 months? The city council may want to say that's fine, but what's the start and due date? Is that what you want to determine this evening?
I think the hard part is we're learning that each project is so different. And in our most recent contracts, I think we've created a lot more space. Like for the fire truck, they have up to 3 years, right? Which we think is way more time than they could possibly need. But that way it was sort of this really soft buffer, right? Whereas I think initially we were more, thinking it would drive things forward. So I don't know what that right buffer is. But I know that we're in a place now where most projects are operating between 6 months to a year behind where they thought they would be in terms of either supply chain, funding sources, just a variety of issues. And because our committee is fairly new, right? This is only our 3rd time going through the funding cycle. I'm not sure exactly how much of that is just impacted by COVID and how much of it is just that's how things work. But I do know that we've been running into it a lot.
So the other thing that I should probably just point out here is that if this particular project is an emergency and they really need to have a commitment, you know, within the next few weeks, maybe you, because I'm going to be gone, will take a little more time and think about what that timeline should be, but still move the request for an extension on this quickly. You know, maybe even before the new council is sworn in, if that's the timeline that you all need to, you know, be assured that you'll qualify for your various funding.
Yeah, Mike.
Madam Chairman, Jim Linfield, would a year extension suffice, given the contract we have with you now? And just give you a blanket 1 year, and would that keep the funding agencies happy for you to secure the funding that you're looking for?
Yeah, yes. I mean, and there is definitely a long lead time on these projects. And I think, just for yourselves, as you're saying, you're learning, or, an experience from, I don't think a 2 year, and I'm not saying I need that now because we've been involved in that, but it's almost a 2 year window from the time that a developer has to approach the city and the CPC and the separate funding sources and pull those supportive services together to approach the state, which is the ultimate controller of the larger funds. We have to start garnering all the other commitments in order to approach the state. And that usually takes, a good 6 months lead before you're putting in your first application with the state. And the way this process with the state tends to work is that first application is almost you can be awarded on your first application with the state, and now you've garnered, your permanent lenders and all the other sources of funding that you've had to go to first before you go to the state. And it's almost just a look at your project. I mean, again, you can be awarded. I'm not saying they don't occur on the first time, but often, like this project, you're waived off on the first and then given a secondary application period. In this case, this project was put into the mini round. I had another project. It was pushed out a full year before my opportunity to even apply again. This one was delayed. The mini round, as they call it. It was a 9 months, not my 9 months in between the original application and being able to reapply. So, I mean, just within that period, this will still be 18 months, probably before, from the first point where you start reaching out, trying to find local sources and other sources. So it's definitely a long lead time. I don't know if a fire truck would take 3 years. And nowadays, does that include tires? I mean, because, the supply chain or whatever. So,
No.
Not in this case, thankfully. So I'm wondering if it makes sense for us Amy and I can work together our goal is to spend some time next week going through each project and looking at every single deadline and tracking what were the full funding deadlines, what were the completion deadlines, who are we afraid is not going to meet those deadlines, who needs an extension, because it doesn't look like it's going to happen in time before the contract is, it's beyond the timeline. And I think we'd like to pull together the names of those projects and then go to the city council and group them together and ask for an extension up to 2 years. And that would be for funding deadlines as well as for completion deadlines. A lot of that has to do with just it being a simple process and it being something that we could do once and not have to keep going back to the city council again and again and again. Mary, what do you think? You had your hand up.
Do you need a vote? I think that if you're going to do that next week with Amy, and I think Mimi pointed out that things maybe should be done before or ready for the days before the new council is signed in. I think that's January 6th, but I'm not sure about that. And so do you need a vote saying that you can go ahead and do this quickly?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I move that we authorize Megan to work with Amy to go through all of the contracts and see what ones need extensions, and then prepare a list for city council and ask for a 3-year extension. Does that include everything?
Okay, you extended to 3 from 2?
Oh, I thought that's what you said, but I actually heard Mr. Linfield say 18 months. And that's when I kind of jumped to the conclusion that maybe it should be like the fire truck and say 3 years. So do you want me to say 2 or 3?
If I can just.
Well, let's see if we have a second first before we open for any discussion.
Well, to move it along, Madam Chairman, I'll second it.
Okay, let's open for discussion. Amy and then Kip.
Oh, I just wanted to mention that normally the city council has no say over the actual terms of they just, can accept, reject, or reduce the recommended funding. But because we put some stuff in writing that they saw and voted on based on that, as we were talking about, that's why. So I don't know if this needs to be done for every single, including future project, because like I'm saying, it's really up to the committee to decide the terms. It's more the past projects where there was language in there about terms at the time that the city council voted that we need to address with them.
Thank you. Kip.
What specific contracts are we talking about, or that's something yet to be determined?
It's yet to be determined, but I'll tell you that it's come up with a number of projects. So I know it's true of Wayfinders, but it's also going to be true of Pulaski, the study that we put out, because the RFP has not, I was going to say this a little bit later, but the request for proposal has not been taken up. So they haven't gotten any response to it yet. So by the time someone responds to it, we'll already be beyond the time frame that's specified in the contract at this point. Right. So it's just like the contract language is just hemming us in ways that just doesn't feel helpful. I think there are some projects where it really makes sense to have really tight deadlines. And I think I understand why we ended up doing that, because of a project that we had our first year that required that. And then it became precedent for all projects. But I think that it sort of landed us in this place of a lot of complexity that isn't actually necessary as a safeguard for funding, or at least right now. It's sort of that we have sort of abdicated having those conversations here around deadlines and potentially wanting to not vote to extend, right? We sort of outsourced that to city council by sort of setting these deadlines by which, like, well, we would only give 3 months, but city council could maybe give you more, versus we don't need to do that. That could be something that we do here. And we could vote and say as a group, actually, we really feel like this project's not happening, right? We've been patient. It's been 3 years and you've missed this round and that round and that round of funding. And we cannot vote to go forward at this point. This money needs to move back to the general fund so we can open it up for other projects. But that is a conversation that we can have here versus requiring city council to do that. But our current contracts do that, right? They say city council will handle this extension after a certain point.
Well, I mean, I do think that deadlines or schedules are one of the considerations that members review when voting whether or not to support funding of a project, right? I mean, I think there has been early on, a desire to have money spent sooner rather than later. So that I think was maybe the motivation for establishing deadlines, saying, okay, we don't want to tie money up for 2, 3, 4, 5, however many years, when there's a competing proposal that might spend that money sooner rather than later. So it's a little concerning to me to be kind of providing, no drop dead deadlines for projects. And Wayfinders, I remember focusing on this very seriously when they came to us, under the emergency application and having this discussion about deadline, about when they would be spending the money. And I forget, specific terms, but I believe it was, they were going to have commitments by June, and then if, you know, that they had the worst case, they wanted another 3-month extension, so that would get us to September. And, you know, now we're talking about extending that for another, I don't know how long, 2 years, 3 years. So I don't know, it just seems when reviewing these applications, there's a number of factors that we consider, and one of them is kind of the timeliness of the project, and I think that's appropriate. So, you know, I'm a little concerned about the Wayfinder request, because it was very clear to me. I mean, I was very focused on, okay, here's an emergency application that has this. And the reason it's emergency is because we have this very short-term need for our application, and we'll get funded on this date. And, you know, worst case, it'll bounce until, you know, September. So that's
one thing we've discovered about housing is that CPA is almost always first in money. And it seems to me like a very unique piece with housing, that these projects seem very complicated. And it does seem in general, you know, that we are going to have certain projects specifically connected to housing that are going to take a lot of years to get off the ground. And I do think that's a reason to have a deadline. But in this case, I think that when they came to us with the emergency application, their thinking was, oh, we need this first in money to show that we have this commitment so that we can access this other funding, and we need it quickly, right? And that's why it came in as an emergency, but then they did not get the funding in that round, right? So they came back and they said, we're applying for this mini round, so we need this extension, right? And at that point, you know, we moved them forward for an extension. But then when we went back and looked at the contract, it was in the Contract Subcommittee, we saw that there was another date in there we hadn't been attending to, which is that it wasn't just a completion deadline, there was a funding deadline. And that's the one that they've missed, right? So, I mean, I think there's two things here, right? Like, one, it's wanting contracts in the future to be way more, it doesn't even need to be a softer deadline. It doesn't need to be, hey, you have 3 years, but it just needs to be that we have the power of discretion here versus us constantly going back to city council. But the projects that we already have are what we have, right? In terms of how the contract language is written. So trying to figure out how to best respond now.
right. But we also, those contracts were drafted based upon the applicants presenting a schedule as to what they were going to do. Right. So there were competing projects that didn't get funded and projects that were funded that said, you know, I need a year. So, you know,
Okay.
And that for me was the case with this Wayfinders, you know, because I was, and we, if you remember, we had Stephen Huntley saying to us, you know, I need more time than that. If I had known you were going to, you know, do this, I would have come in with emergency application, and I would have different deadlines in mind. So we've tried to match the two of those up to be fair to both parties. But I do feel like this one was a little bit of a bait and switch, that there was, we're going to get this funding short term, and we need you to act now. But in response to questions about tying this money up for a long term, it was, no, it's not going to get tied up for a long term. We're, you know, we'll need, June we'll know, in worst case, it'll be, you know, September. And now we've all learned that it doesn't really work that way, and that they do need more time. So, you know, I know there's two different issues here, and I agree that, you know, having, you know, which means we presented to the city council information about schedules. You know, perhaps we should not have provided that information, but then that's what formed the basis for the contract terms. That, okay, we've told the city council that it's going to be done in 12 months. And if it's not, we need to go back to the city council for extensions. So, you know, we can correct that going forward, but it's going to be like this open-ended thing with the authority solely vested in this committee. You know, I don't know how the city council feels about that, but we'll see. So that's just my thoughts on this. And I would want to know what specific projects we're talking about and what kind of extensions we're talking about going to the city council with before kind of voting for, blanket approval for, you and Amy to look at which ones. I mean, I'll bring up MIFA as an example. They had a funding deadline that they didn't meet. And so, are we going to extend that too?
I think that was my point earlier, Kip, and that there were certain projects that we really wanted specific deadlines on. And I think it set precedent for everything.
Oh, God.
Okay.
Mimi, you have your hand up.
Just wanted to throw in some quick background information here. And, I think this came about in part because of MIFA, where clearly there was a great deal of both skepticism and political sensitivity to the initial contract. And, they had a beautiful site plan, and they came into us with an absolute confident, we are going to have this done by a year and a half. And it was clear that there was resistance to just giving them open-ended funding because it had been so long. And it was appropriate to kick that to the city council and make sure that everybody there was getting to rethink every request for an extension on that. The affordable housing projects, I think, are a bit different in that we didn't know. Now we know how uncertain the funding is and what kind of timeline we're often working on. And the city council, I think, is more familiar with it too through us because they've had their hearings. We've presented this information. And, this one in particular, the Library Commons 1 is up and running. Library Commons 2 seems like likely to be a successful project if the funding comes through. And I think the city council has become more tolerant of these are the timelines and we will trust you to work with them. They've approved our last few requests with no trouble whatsoever. So I think that given the familiarity, although I agree with Mr. Foley that we shouldn't just be rubber stamping these things every time they come back, and it does make sense to have deadlines and re-review them, we may be competent to re-review them here and just ask for that authority from the council the same way that we asked for the small grant authority. They may not want to see it. It would be our request and their decision in the end. But I think that as we look at these, the affordable housing projects could maybe be separated out as a category from the other kinds of projects because they're the ones that need the extensions.
Right now we have 4 projects that I know of that need an extension. Wayfinders, which is housing, Chestnut Street, which is housing, Mayor Field, which is open space and rec, and War Memorial, which is historic. There are 4.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying we could go line by line through each one and we could look at it and decide, that it's 6 months for this and 8 months for this and 9 months for that, or we could lump them together as one and go to the city council and say, for these past projects, which all need extensions, we would like more of a buffer of time in order to make sure these projects move to completion.
Meg, what was the 4th one? There's Wayfinder, Pulaski, Chestnut Street, and...
we have Mayor Field may need an extension, and then also the War Memorial.
Okay, Mayor Field.
VOC.
Okay, and the War Memorial. Okay.
And the Chestnut Street VOC project. So it's just a host of them, and I'm telling you, it's just feeling overwhelming. And then we keep seeing more and more contracts come up that have issues. We're trying to respond, and every time it's a real process, right? So I'm trying to figure out, is there a way to make it less of a process that's more streamlined so we know we have the discretion to respond given how contracts were written in the past? And then maybe we have to just be way more thoughtful about how the contract terms are crafted in the future.
So there's 5 of them.
Well, Mayor Field may not even, I don't think that requires going to city council. I have to look that over though.
So there's 4 or 5 of them. And and the motion is to grant how long of an extension for each of them?
Well,
Right
I
now-
put in 3, but I mean, we can
We could amend that.
amend that.
So
Would someone like to amend the motion?
is 3 or is 2 better?
I'm happy with 2. But I think 3 is fine. I think we just need space.
I like 2 better than 3. I mean, just because you're tying up money for a long time, right? I mean,
Make an amendment.
I'll make a motion to amend Mary's motion to make it a 2-year instead of 3-year extension for those 4, maybe 5 contracts we just discussed.
Any discussion on the amendment or the proposed amendment to the motion?
No second.
Oh, do we need a second for an amendment on the motion? A second? I think, Mike, I saw your hand.
Well, this is not easy. 2 years is fine. But the need is still there. The amount of money is still there. We're talking about time. Sometimes the federal government and the state government don't respond in the way we want them to, and as quickly as we do. Should we hold the money hostage or hold the people who want the money hostage for having no control over the states or the federal government and how they conduct their business or how quickly or not so quickly they conduct it? Kip, I feel your pain. I really do. I think we all do. But it wouldn't be a bad idea. God, if this, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a 2-year extension for the for the 4 or 5 that you mentioned, Madam Chairman. And let's move on. The need is still there. The amount of money is still the same. The scope of the activity is still the same. The contract participants are still the same. So yeah, Kip, you're right. I mean, we live in an unusual time. And so I think we all feel your frustration. We all do. So I think 2 years is reasonable for the 5 people that you spoke of, Madam Chairman. And then let's, at this point in the ball game, play it by ear. I mean, I don't know what else to say. But at times we can't hold the people who, in all good faith, may say, yeah, we can get it done in a year or 18 months or 2 years, only to find out that the feds or the state have very different funding cycles, and they may or may not agree with it. So I would, Madam Chairman, I would support Kip's amendment, make it 2 years, and just let it go at that.
Let's vote on the amendment, the proposed amendment. All in favor of the amendment from 3 to 2 years?
Aye.
Okay. And all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right. So we are we're in a good place with the fire truck contract is now fully executed, which is exciting. The Scott Tower contract is now in motion. It's been signed by most parties and is almost executed, which is good. Amy did some good yeoman's work around getting us on sign now so that we can actually move contracts through electronically. Welcome to the 21st century, CPC. So we were able to execute some contracts in a more timely manner, which felt really good. The Wayfinders contract, so yes, in terms of needing the full funding deadline to be moved in order to keep funding going. And Kathy Degnan, the city solicitor, is really close to having their affordable restriction done, which is good news. She's working on drafting that. Other contract updates. So the fiscal year 19 project, the Chestnut Street VOC, that needs to go forward for an extension. to City Council, the FY20 Holyoke merry-go-round carousel contract was amended to drop the preservation restriction as we had voted on last meeting and was fully signed and executed by December 3rd. Wistariahurst had two concurrent projects going, FY20 and FY21. FY20, you'll remember they had around $80,000 left that was underspent because they had completed the work, amazingly, just with way less complication than they had feared, right? And they had initially come back and said, could we use it to continue doing more work on electrical work? But when I talked to the city solicitor's office, the sense that it really was a different scope of work outside of the original contract. And so I spoke to Bob Parent and also to Megan Seeler, who's the director at Wistariahurst, and they decided to instead amend their current FY21 contract or FY21 application so that if they really do need to do some additional electrical work, they're going to shift that into the scope of their current application. So that means that $81,000 and change went back into the CPC coffers and can be reallocated in this funding cycle. The FY21 Wistariahurst project, the contract has now been fully signed and executed. Fiscal year 21 War Memorial. This is the stuff that happens when you have paper contracts. We had a clerical error. Michael said he had caught an error where there was two different award amounts on the page. One was 55,000 and one was 60. He caught it. Amy caught it. They fixed it. And then someone printed the wrong contract that was not accurate. And that's the one that was signed. And so we're now going through the process of having those two originals returned to me and the city solicitor so that we can line out the change, and then I'll initial the clerical error so that the award amount is clear. So we are going through that process to make sure that contract is in a good place. Mary, do you want to add something? Your hand is up, or was that from before?
Yeah, no, this is for the sake of the minutes. I'm sorry. You in 3A, you have Scott's Tower fire truck and Wayfinders, and you just said something about fire truck and Wayfinders. Did you want to say something about Scott's Tower there also? Is that contract executed?
So the contract is in the process of being signed, but it's completed. Okay. It's been approved by all parties. I think it has 2 or 3 signatures on it and should have all of them and should be fully executed by the end of the week. So that's good news.
Thank you.
No problem. So War Memorial contract, we're working on fixing that from FY21. And that, of course, is also a project that needs an extension. Okay. Restrictions updates from fiscal year 19, the Chestnut Street VOC project, the preservation restriction. Amy and I met with Stephen Huntley and Ellen Freitas and worked to make sure that the preservation restriction was complete and was acceptable to all parties. And it is now in a finalized stage. It is not yet signed, and the reason why is because it will be executed at the time of the project launch, and that's when it is registered. Amy, yes?
Actually, it can be signed by the parties. It just won't be actually recorded yet. And so right now I've made sure that Richard Alstrom had a copy because they're like the people who will be holding it, and they're all going to have to be signatories at some point.
The Historic Commission, you mean?
Yeah, the Holyoke Historical Commission. And so and we don't have to have MHC approve it. That was they were wrong when they told me that. So it should be very, straightforward to then use sign now and have everybody sign electronically. So at least that's ready to be recorded at the time, that it needs to be.
So, woo, exciting stuff. The fiscal year Jackson Street first time home buyer affordable housing restriction. Kathy has drafted that, and it is now going to all of the parties to make sure that it is acceptable, and then we'll move forward on getting that signed and recorded.
Oh, so that's not going to go by sign now? She's doing it as a hard copy?
No, we can move it through sign now. She's just going through the process now of making sure it's acceptable to all parties. So it's not to the signing stage yet.
Okay, I just hope she knows to send it to me to do that.
Do you want to email her to confirm that? It's a new process. We just started using it last week, and that may be on her radar and it may not be.
You want me to email her, but I'll CC you too, because you seem to have a good connection with her. So
Thank you. Okay, fiscal year 20 Armour & Co. Canal Row LLC Street. So for the facade work, this was a fiscal year 20 project. Marco and Dennis are here. They have joined us to talk about a potential vote on a 6-month extension, which we are allowed to give per our contract terms just from the CPC without going to the city council. Marco and Dennis, does either of you or both of you want to chime in and give us a little framing?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks very much for inviting us. So yeah, we would like to respectfully ask for the extension. And I know that we had discussed some design changes, which are still ongoing. And you know, we're happy to give you some information on that. I think my brother is a little more up to date on the changes, so I'll let him chime in with that. If he's here, is he still here?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I was trying to figure out the unmute button. So we had a meeting maybe a month or so ago, just to kind of review the plans. So we've accommodated most of it. You know, we've moved the main entrance. We're waiting for the window contractor to give us a proposal for double hung windows that could be installed by the summer. You know, the big that's the big obstacle right now. And we've been looking at the National Park Service website where it has all the specifications, and there are a couple of things there that we'd like to discuss. And I was wondering actually maybe if you know, we could have a separate meeting, maybe with Marco Crescentini, just to go over some of these options, just to see what would be feasible and take it from there to see if we should even be considering things. The big challenge we have right now is floor space, trying to maximize it in a way that we can, you know, still respect the outside of the building and maintain it. Is that possible, or with a subgroup or something like that? What do you think, Marco?
I'm not sure how to respond. I would have thought that any kind of activity on your project should have been done, or should be done here. Meg, I'm certainly happy to jump in and help. I'm taken a little aback because I wasn't prepared to. I don't really understand what the mechanics of that would be. I'd be happy to do something here if you like, or.
Well, I think because in the last meeting, it seemed like you had you know, a good sense of where we should be headed, what would be appropriate, what would not. You know, we were proposing to add a door, that kind of thing. So in this case, you know, we have some thoughts in terms of an addition on the side in the adjacent property that would abut to it. Wanted to show you a preliminary design to see if that is even something we should be considering. According to the NPS, it could be done if it's distinct and separate, you know, so maybe something that's more of a modern architectural approach. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't want to ask the architect to spend too much time on that if it's something that's not going to be feasible.
Mm-hmm. Mike, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, Marco, it's a good, you know, if Marco Crescentini is agreeable to sit down with you guys and they offer a little guidance, that's fine. But I'm just wondering if we're the correct people you should look to. I'm just thinking of the Holyoke Preservation Committee or the Holyoke Historic Committee. I would think they would be the proper channel for you to say, look, are these windows, we check with the, I don't know, National Park Service or whoever the federal bureau is or whatever, state bureau, and they agreed that that's a good window or that's a good door. But I think I would be more comfortable with Preservation Committee or the Holyoke Preservation Committee or the Holyoke Historic Committee. You presented before you came to us, you presented them, and they said, yes, we agree. Those are historically correct, and I don't want to get us into the. I don't want this committee to become an arbitrator of what's a good door and what isn't.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, I just think that's not our call. It's certainly the call of any preservation group locally or the Holyoke Historic Commission that you guys should go to first and make your pitch and select alternatives. And if they agree to a particular door or a location that's congruent with the rest of the environment or the historical process, and they give you the blessings for that window or that door, beautiful. Love to hear it. But I don't think we should be the ones that make that decision, sir. Madam
Yeah, no,
Chairman,
that makes sense.
Yeah, and
sorry.
I think you were leaning into like, oh, maybe it would make sense to connect with Marco, and that's because Marco sits on the Historic Commission, right? Or is our representative from the Historic Commission. So I really do think it makes sense to bring it there. Sorry, my apologies. My little ones just came home from hockey. I think it makes sense to present to them and get a sense from them around what's going to comply with the standards of the Department of the Interior, and then come back to us.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's, I had kind of forgotten about that first phase that we approached them. I guess that's what we're really looking for is that sort of guidance where we should go. So I'll reach out to the Historic Preservation Committee, and do you know offhand who might be the right person, or I could figure it out?
Richard Alstrom is the chair.
Richard Alstrom. Okay. Yeah.
I just want to mention there's also a published, binder that you can get on the U.S. standards, the historic standards, which might be able to answer some of your questions.
Yeah, and we have access to that, and we're working on that. But really, at the end, it comes down to interpretation, and,
I see.
and what might work or not. Like it clearly states there that if other avenues are exhausted, and in addition is like, think of the Holyoke Public Library type thing, although not of that magnitude. But there they've combined a historic building with a different style. And that's precisely what they state on the guidelines. In that case, it should be a distinct architectural, so it doesn't get confused with the original building. Because what we're trying to do now is, in order to accommodate some other things, we're trying to keep everything on one floor. And that's where the space issue comes. But I'll reach out to them. And I guess the bottom line is we are working on it. And we're just trying to work some last details out.
Sounds good. But in the meantime, I think it does make sense to vote here on the extension, and then for you to come back with your understanding from the Historic Commission, and if there's any shifts to the schematic drawings that were approved earlier, to present them here for sure. Hopefully with the blessing of the Historic Commission. So the conversation here is around, especially with supply chain stuff, things slowing down. So yes, it was design work, but it's also ordering and being able to move forward with those kinds of pieces. So I think that's my understanding of why you're asking for the extension. If there's anything else that you want to name.
No, it's primarily that. It's the project was delayed for because, as so many other things, because of COVID. But now, when we started, it's been actually very difficult to get some contractors to start on time. And so we just switched over now the mason so that we can continue with the brickwork. But yeah, right now it's fundamentally in addition to the design, the windows, trying to get windows in place by the summer.
Okay, Mike.
Madam Chairman, Marco and your brother Dennis, that being said, do you think 6 months is enough? I mean, I'm just wondering. You can't get a candy bar for under 3 weeks. I mean, are you sure you're going to get a window approved through a committee, then through us, and then on order, and get it within 6 months? Especially these are custom windows. Are you sure? Are you sure that you might need more than 6 months? I mean, it's your call. It's your call.
Yeah, I mean, if it could be 1 year, that would be ideal. But it's apparently in the contract, it said 6 months, just to keep it, simple, but 1 year would be best.
If we go beyond a 6 months extension, then it's like putting them in the same group of projects that we have to go to the city council for, right? And saying we're looking for, a discretion around extensions. Kip, your hand was up.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest maybe we add this project to the list of the other projects that we're going back to for 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be ideal.
My thinking too.
I'll
Okay.
make that motion.
Thank you, Kip. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Dennis and Mark will be in touch. We're looking forward to seing any of the new schematics.
So,
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Hey,
Meg, before
thanks.
they leave-
Sorry for the confusion there, Marco.
No problem. Thank you.
Meg.
Yes.
So I was just going to suggest that maybe a little bit of a belt and suspenders, but when is their 6 month, when does their current term run up? And maybe we should vote for the discretionary 6 months that we have now in case the city council doesn't vote to approve our list of 5.
Mm-hmm.
Is that necessary at this meeting, or do we have other meetings coming up where we could handle that?
Yeah.
I don't know what the deadlines are.
If we had to, we could vote on it in the next meeting.
Okay.
If we don't hear anything positively back from city council.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
And Mr. Linfield, don't feel like you need to stay unless you want to. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Megan. Bye.
No, it was good. I enjoyed listening, and yeah, it's nice to hear that others are having timing issues, because often it feels like you're in your own little bunker with the joy of, this is not easy even without COVID and supply chain issues. I'll take Marco's for 500 also, but
All right. So we're gonna shift now. I have here like a possible executive section. So I want to start by giving a little bit of background here for why this is here. So in the last, I'm not sure I have the dates right. So in the last meeting, we met and we shared our information from an executive session that we'd had between myself and Mike Falsetti and Mary Moriarty. And I had followed the guidance from the Attorney General's office. I had called and said, how do I run an executive session around having a raise for a staffer? Never done it before. What does this process look like? And they said, well, it's really important that it has to be a separate meeting. It's very important that it has to be, you have to keep minutes. You have to submit the minutes in the next meeting. It has to be within 30 days. The meeting has to be public. And I took really careful notes. And I ran what I thought was what they expected me to run. And then at the end of it, Kip said, I have a concern when we share out the minutes at the next meeting that I think it needed to be posted within an existing meeting and that every member had to be there. So I called the AG's office back and I talked to 4 different people. I got a lot of different information. And the original person that I was speaking to did not understand that we were in a virtual meeting setting. Which I think was the source of most of the disconnect, because I kept hearing them say it has to be a separate meeting, and I'm like, well, we're in Zoom when we have a separate meeting. So in my mind, when I was hearing her repeat this to me several times, I thought it meant it had to be a separate meeting, meaning a different meeting. And what she meant was it needed to be literally a way of recusing yourself physically from the room, right? So when I called back and said, I don't know if this is what you meant, here was the concern that was raised in the meeting. And they said, well, we didn't understand that you were talking about a virtual space. And it took a few conversations for them to think through what the process would be in a virtual space. And in a virtual space, what they want is for us to go into a breakout room. So effectively, what they consider a separate meeting in a Zoom world is us going into a breakout room, having that conversation as a group with no members of the public present, and then returning from the breakout room, right? And those minutes then becoming public after 30 days. So when I spoke to the AG's office and the city solicitor, they felt like this is not the biggest deal. It is just so easy to have things be really confusing right now in a virtual world. And I'm also a new chair, right? I'm learning how to do this. So they said, just name it in the meeting. And that's the cure, right? For the open meeting violation is naming kind of what happened and then what the next steps is. And the next step is that we effectively have to redo that conversation in a breakout room with all of us there, minus members of the public, and then return. And keep minutes while we are in that meeting, and then submit them in the next meeting. Okay. So we're going to do that now. I don't know if Mimi Pinich is here, but I think you are now considered a member of the public, which means I think you have to stay here. And I think that would also be true of James Linfield, but everyone else, and that would also be true of Mary Bell and Francesca. Everyone else would go to the breakout room to have this conversation, and then we'd have to vote to do it and then vote to leave it. Okay. Mary, your question, and then Marco.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of things. One is that you went from agenda item 3, you did A, B, C, and there is D and E on the agenda, and then you skipped both of those and went to 4. Did we need a motion to take it out of order, or were you done with D and E? And we did not take up D and E.
Okay, so I
so
see
that's
D, updates on extensions, and we had already earlier voted that we were going to move Mayerfield and War Memorial forward to the city council for extension.
okay.
So I feel like we'd actually had taken them up already. And then the only piece for work completion updates is just that I named already that Pulaski Park has had an issue finding a vendor. And
Okay.
I don't know if we named that the JFK Monument work had started. I think I named that in the last meeting, actually. But the Pulaski Park piece was the new piece underneath that.
Okay, and the other thing is that the rate, Amy, the administrator's rate was taken up at the city council meeting last night. It was on the agenda. I didn't listen, so I don't know what happened. But just to make you aware that that was taken up there already. Does anyone know what happened?
I will have to follow up on that because I was never told of that. And also, I know there's one piece that was taken up that I will share later, which just have to do with our budget and the next agenda item. But I can follow up on that, Mary. And if you have the agenda item or can find it at some point, just forward it to me and then I'll follow up.
Not
Okay.
tonight, though, another time. Okay, thank you.
All right, so we have to vote to now go into executive session. And then if we do agree to go into executive session, we would then go into a breakout room. Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion for us to go into a breakout room so that we can discuss the raise of our staffer, Amy Landau. Do I hear a second?
Madam Chairman, point of order, just for myself, is John, have you been approved by the city council to be the new guy from?
Not required. You just have to have a person who was the planning board, Michael, to be on this particular group. So
No, I mean, have you been voted? I mean, what I'm
there's no
apprehending.
vote required. There's no vote required, Michael. Someone from the planning
Oh,
board sits
okay.
on this automatically.
Oh,
And,
okay, so
And what we
it's
do, we can't rotate it, you know, among the planning board members. So
no
at our
problem.
meeting,
John.
at our last meeting, it's recorded that I will become the new representative.
Okay, no problem,
Yeah.
John. I
No.
didn't want somebody to say, hey, wait a
No,
minute.
I
we got
understand.
two people from the planning board, who's in and who's out. They have no right to be there. That kind of thing.
No, John's the guy and I'm out.
Well, you'll be with us in our hearts, certainly.
Okay, so we have to take a roll call vote to enter into executive session. So
Who seconded it?
I will.
Okay.
okay, Marco, do you want to say anything before we do that? Your hand
I
up.
do. I don't understand where the breakout room is. So yeah.
Amy, have you made the breakout room?
I thought you were going to do that, Meg. You had told me that you were going to do it, but are you saying that you want me to make a breakout room for you and the other officers, which would be Mike and Mary?
Amy, do you see an option to make a
Yeah, I
breakout room
do.
on your
I know
screen?
where it is. I just thought that you told me you were going to do it. I just want to know, is the breakout room is just for you, Mary, and Mike? Is that correct?
No, it would be for all members of
Everybody.
the committee.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you wanted me to be the person to do that, but I'll try to do it. You had told me you were going to do it, but I'll do the best I can. So everybody.
So it depends on how the Zoom meeting is
The other problem,
so
there's a problem though, because I use the city laptop, which freezes a lot. So
Amy,
actually,
do you want to make me the host then? Because
I
as co-host,
have,
I
you are
don't
a co-host. You're a co-host. You can do it.
I know I'm the co-host. It's the way the meeting is set up. I don't have the capacity to make breakout rooms. Usually I can as a co-host in meetings. But
Okay, then I'll make you the host. I read that you can do it. You don't see it as an option?
No.
Under more?
Nope.
Okay, I'm going to make you the host then. I won't have the power to do other things later. You'll have to make me a co-host later, but I'm going to make you the host now.
Yeah, I can switch back host too later.
Okay. Yeah, since my computer freezes up, I don't think it would be safe for me to be the one to do the breakout room.
Yes, no worries. I'm working on the breakout room now.
Okay. And you're going to do a roll call vote, right? Okay.
Okay. So I have the
Madam
breakout
Chair.
room set up for the 6 of us to go. So when I open the room, I know we have to do a roll call first. I'm just naming it so that we have some logistics. So it's John, Kip, Marco, Mary, Michael, and Mimi that would be invited into the breakout room. Yes, John?
I think, do we have to first recess this meeting? Are we coming back into a formal meeting with this committee after we do executive session? So I think the first vote we need would be to recess this meeting.
No.
And then have a roll call vote for executive session.
It's true.
That's certainly the way the planning board has always done it when we had to.
You're right,
Okay.
John.
Thank you, John.
But John's the guy, not me.
No, so I'll make a motion to recess the meeting of the Community Preservation Act Committee.
Second it.
All right. And I'll make a motion to move us into executive session. Is there a second?
Second.
And then
Actually, I'm sorry, Meg. I'm just hearing from our Holyoke media person. He's very familiar with how city council works, and he says it's not true. You don't recess. You know, that's why he's planning to put everyone on mute who's not in the executive session room. That's what he's telling me. I don't know, but that's what he's telling me.
No.
we have to
We
follow.
over the years have always
We've
recessed.
already
Whatever
recessed
you want
the
to do,
meeting.
I'm just pointing out what we've always done in planning board.
No. John,
I'm
you're
going
right.
with John and Mike. I'm pretty sure you do have to recess before you can
Yes.
go into an executive session. If you don't recess, that means everyone still is part of the open
Right.
meeting.
Exactly.
And we have had legal counsel in the room with us when we've done it. So
Okay, I'm just sharing the information.
Thank you. Okay. So a roll call vote to enter into executive session. Mary Moriarty,
Yes. Aye.
Michael Falsetti,
Yes.
John Kelly,
Yes.
Michael Carcentini,
Yes.
Mimi Panich.
No.
Oh, sorry. Nope. Bad. It's a habit. I'm gonna get out of it. Kip Foley.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna open up the room and then we will be in executive session there.
Make a motion to resume the regular CPC meeting.
And a second.
No second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Welcome back, everybody. We did it. Well, that was exciting. We went in and out of breakout rooms. All right. Thank you, everybody. We are now going to move on to talking about the budget. So I was working with Andrew, who has been doing some paid work for us on CPC to support us with the budget. The budget's really complicated. It's complicated because we have, what is it, Amy, 27 projects? Is that true? I think it's that many at this point. And many of them are overlapping, right? We still have projects that are in motion, that are coming in and out of work. And as things also are sort of being encumbered, right, for projects, but then also some funding has been released back, right, into the coffers. It's complicated. So Andrew's been helping us with that and supporting us with that. So one of the pieces that's happened with the budget that I wanted to make sure everyone understood was that we had a big difference this year between what we projected from our budget versus what our actual budget was. And that's because we had a really unprecedented state match, right? So we projected that the state match would be similar to what it had been in previous years, which was 32.3%. But then the state came back at a 39.4% match. So it was significantly higher than we expected. Usually, you really have to use your projected budget, right? But it was such a difference that I felt like it really warranted going to finance, the subcommittee of this city council, and asking them to consider actually amending our budget so that we had access to everything. So Mike Sullivan was able, City Councilor Sullivan was able to get that passed on the floor last night, which is wonderful news. And what that means, I'm going to share a screen for a minute so we can see. Okay. So on this document, you can see we put this forward to the Finance Committee. The request for City Council to vote to appropriate and reserve from the Community Preservation Fund annual revenues in the amounts recommended by the Community Preservation Committee for Committee Administrative Offenses and Reserves in fiscal year 2022, with each item to be considered a separate appropriation. So we were able to in fact have the entire budget approved in the actual funding that we have versus the projected, which increased our budget by about $140,000, which is pretty cool that we're going to have more access to funding this year because we have a lot of really great projects to spend it on. Or to propose spending money on. So what that means right now is that for fiscal year 2022, we have a CPA budget of $759,991. And that includes, of course, 5% being put in for administrative and then 10% for historic, housing, and open space each, and with the remaining allocated to budget reserve to utilize at the committee's discretion. And one thing to consider too this year is that we don't have housing projects that came forward, right? So we know that there's 10% of our budget that we won't touch, right? It will roll over into just the housing category in a coming fiscal year, and we'll use it in projects in the future. But we won't use it this year. Okay. Stop sharing. Amy Landau is also doing some work on the administrative budget to kind of better flesh out what does that mean. Amy, would you mind sharing the work that you did on the administrative budget?
Sure. It's just that my computer is slow, so and often kind of freezes up. So I have clicked share screen, and I have something ready to show you. I'm just waiting for it to open. Oh, you have to, it says host disabled participant screen sharing. Can you make me a co-host again? I don't, maybe that's, I don't know why that's happening.
Yeah, you should be able to share now too.
Yeah, it says that. Okay, all right, here we go. All right, I'll be able to do it. Okay, so yeah, so I looked at you know, the new the revised FY22 budget that Meg was just talking about, and this is based on the 38,000 towards the admin portion, and I had to kind of project out, you know, expenses for purchase of services, things like, you know, the coalition dues and other needs that come up, also supplies that might be needed. So the website, that's another cost, things like that. Andrew McMahon's pay as a consultant. And then I had my pay as of yet here for the hours worked, as well as based on the $30 per hour raise. So backdating to the beginning of the fiscal year, as well as the projected amount based on about 14 hours on average per week, because at this point it's already over 12 hours and the workload does increase as there's more and more projects in there. And I'll just scroll down and go through this. So yeah, so as I said, the revised FY22 admin amount is 38,000. Let's see. So I calculated the funds remaining after the projected costs to be $8,668.72. But with the estimated cost of, for example, things like a hired videographer, which I think Meg may talk about later, that which could be, say, $5,000 to do a video about CPA projects, that would leave us with $3,668.72. So this is all projected, you know, it's not, this is just an estimate of what it might be after these things, you know, are taken into consideration. And yeah, Andrew has looked at this and says that it's correct.
Okay, thank you so much, Amy. So what this means is that effectively we have around $8,600 that are left in admin that we assume will not be expended. And I wanted to bring to you, you know, some research that I did around some of the conversations that we had based on the survey, which is we talked about how the public really wanted more information, right? They wanted more outreach. The public really wanted more ways of understanding how their money was being spent, and not just information on the website, but also looking for more visual forms of understanding. So we discussed the idea of videos, we discussed the idea of a map, and I've been doing some thinking about that. And I had done some reaching out to folks to think about what that might look like. We're good, Amy. So I wanted to share that I had reached out and had a chance to speak to Luis Salazar, who had done a number of videos for the city over the years and came well recommended. And when I spoke with him, he was really interested in working with the CPC to come up with a series of videos that would showcase who we are and what it does, how the funding can be spent, and to really showcase different projects over the years that we had done that were sort of, would exemplify the work. And he then provided me an estimate yesterday of doing that work. So I wanted to share that with you and then have a conversation around if it's something that we are really interested in pursuing. And I think that we do a lot of work in-house, right? But there are some functions that we have started to sort of, we've done a lot of work on house, but we've also started to do some thinking around where do we need extra support and who can provide it. right? So whether that is having Andrew help us with budget work, right? I think it's possible, for example, that we could go to Holyoke Media and ask them, could you make video? But I also know that they're really strapped. And I don't know, what their capacity would be. So this was another option that I wanted to share as we're starting to have this conversation. So I spoke with Lewis. I'm going to open it up as a Google Doc and then put it in the chat so folks have access to it. So it's in the chat if anyone wants to go ahead and look at it on their own, or I can also screen share. So I make it larger so folks can see it. Okay, their thinking was that it would make sense to have an introductory video and then to have 5 video installments that would sort of have distinct ongoing projects representing public purposes. So maybe 1 or 2 that are on historic, 1 or 2 that represent open space and recreation, 1 or 2 that represent different housing projects, and to create a series of videos that we could have on our website. They could also be linked into the map that we've been talking about, right, as kind of a visual and film way of documenting our work. And could also be shared, for example, at things like the public meeting, right? We could actually show parts of the videos, right, over the course of the public presentations or the public meetings. So his proposal was that it would be completed between December and February. And with the first video would be available in time for our public meeting in late January. He assumed that the project would take 8 days at a daily rate of $75. And then with post-production and editing, the entire project would take around $4,850. I wanted to share that with you as this was me reaching out to someone in our community who does this kind of work and was saying, this is about the scope of it. This is how much it would cost. So I've sort of done my due diligence in reaching out and trying to figure out what this would look like if we wanted to pursue it. So I would love your thoughts on it. And if you're interested in us pursuing it, or if you want me to continue doing more research and more thinking, I could certainly find more quotes from other folks. But I'd like to hear what you're thinking about it. And if you want me to pursue having this kind of series of videos made for the CPC. Michael?
Madam Chairman, is the $4,850, is this out of, just to get my head right with this, is this out of the administration budget for FY22, this $4,850? Or is this?
It's out of the admin budget. So if there's right now, $8,600 that's planned unexpended in the admin budget. So this $4,800 would come out of that planned money that we know we won't spend in admin. If we don't spend it, right, it goes from admin into the general fund next year, right? But it is there for admin purposes like this.
Well, it's, I don't know. It's a lot of money. It's close to $5,000. I don't know if we're going to get $5,000 worth of production value out of it, whatever that may mean, but I'm wondering, Madam Chairman, does Holyoke Community College have a video department or folks that study video stuff that could do it as a project for their bachelor's degree, or I don't know, a class assignment, if you will, for a couple of guys or gals that could do this for half that, I hope, and just I don't know, food for thought, just to get $5,000 is a lot of money, and I'm not sure it's worth it. 2,500, yeah, you got my attention, but $5,000 is that's a lot of money. I'm just wondering if, like I said, does Holyoke Community College have a department, I don't know, a communications department that may have folks that want to pursue video production and to get their bachelor's or assistant's degree in that. I'm just wondering out loud if that's food for thought.
Mm-hmm. What other folks think? Yeah, Marco?
Yeah, are there videos already in existence that might, they wouldn't be specific to Holyoke, obviously, but, CPA visits and how the funds are collected and what's done with them? Is the purpose of the videos, I guess it's multi-purpose. You mentioned during the public meeting, I guess I was wondering what the content's going to be. I like who's going to create the content. Is it all up to him? Is it a lot of questions there? Like who guides where he goes, and do we really need 5 videos? That's a lot. I just wondered if we should take a smaller step first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's definitely an interesting question. You can always limit the scope of the work, right? I mean, if the goal is to spend less money, then absolutely. There's always ways you can narrow the scope of a project, right? We could just have 1 video instead of 6, right? I think in my mind, I was thinking about, we've been talking about having a map that's really interactive. Amy has this great draft that she started, right, where she's putting information on this Google Maps. Like at some point, I'd love it to be more of a built-out map that's actually integrated into our website. But what I was sort of imagining is if you had different specific spot videos for different projects, then as they're hovering over the map and they're clicking in, they're not just seeing a picture, but they could also click and watch a video pop up, or they could actually then watch a 2-minute long video on the Jackson Street project, or a 2-minute long video on the Lady Liberty statue, and it would sort of be contained. I'm trying to think out of the box around like, how do you get something that's really high quality? People want high quality video these days. They want it to look
that's the thing. Like if I was like, I don't really know much about this, and I was to see something like that, it will better educate me as of what you guys really do. And I'll be more comfortable as, me as an outsider. I'll be more comfortable. Okay, so, this is a good idea. This is nice. It better educates anybody, not just, visually, but it is something that educates people like me that doesn't really know much about this.
Mary, your hand is up, and then back to Marco. Sorry, my dog.
I don't know what the usual costs of these things are, but do I understand correctly? We have that money now. If we don't spend it by when? By the end of December, it goes back into the fund. Is that correct?
So it's a fiscal year, so it ends in July. So July 1.
Oh, all right. So it's not a pressing. It's not pressing that we have to decide on it tonight then, right? It's not something that has to be done before January.
No, it just means that we definitely wouldn't have anything before the public meeting, but that's okay. We could find another way to share it online, right? Or we could show it next year in our January public meeting.
Oh, we have an annual public meeting online, but aren't all of our meetings public?
I'm going to talk about it in the next agenda item, what our public meeting looks like this year.
All right. Okay. So you were hoping to have some of this done by that public meeting?
I think it would be really cool, but I don't know if it's realistic. Right. And I sometimes can get a really cool idea in my head and I want to just like charge forward, make it happen. So I need to make sure that it's not like, just me that would want to do this. I want to make sure the committee is behind this, whatever it looks like.
Well, I'm in favor of doing it. I'm not sure about costs as it compares to others. I think the 4 what did you say? It was 4 2-minute projects, films. I don't think that's a bad idea. Our main thing is to educate the public as to what our purpose is and what we have done. And I think it's the best way to do it is through a video. So I don't know, whatever you can find out or whatever you can get done, I guess I'm in favor of. Also, I'm not sure if he still is there, but there's a Mr. Hines that is at Holyoke High School that used to operate the video program there. That might be something also to use as a resource. He was teaching kids how to do videos, and he did some really good ones over the years. But, you know, you want something professional also.
We have a video from the Boys and Girls Club, right, which they did, right, internally, and they created that and were able to put it together, right? But we don't have any real documentation of our work other than that. So when I talked to Louis Salazar, the idea was that there'd be one video that's introductory, right? Like what is CPC, and spotlighting 5 projects, but very quickly, right? Because they're short. People don't want to watch long videos, right? They want to watch a video that's like 2 minutes or shorter. So the video it would be a short video, and then there'd be spots, right? So there'd be a 2-minute video on each of the 5 projects that were then mentioned in that introductory video. And I think the footage would generally be done at the same time, right? Like I think the work that they would do would largely be like to gate all the footage, right? And then to be able to create in other words, I think we could go back and we could say, hey, what about just one video? What if you just did the introductory video? We could do that. It might be slightly more expensive to do it that way, I'm thinking, in terms of what it looks like to get footage, although I'm not an expert in the field. Marco, your hand's up.
Yeah, we're highlighting or spotlighting like specific projects or categories, because I don't know that I'd want to, like, it'd be nice to build up a library that we can use. So if there's one about the CPA, one about the historic category, one about the, recreation category, open space, and, we could, certainly mention specific projects, but was that correct that there would be about a specific project? Because once that project is gone, the video is gone. Like, it's no longer current. Is that right? Am I understanding that?
I think they just become a bit of if we are talking about building out this map eventually in like a really graphic way, then it would become a treasure trove, right? Of like, it's a way of knowing historically what we've done. And hopefully we're building this map and showing the city. Like I'm imagining long term, right? That in 20 years, you might have a map that has all these different, pings on the map, and people can go in and see really nice photographs that maybe we pay to have done, or really nice videos of some projects, or like a variety of ways of sort of interacting.
I'm just going to say that I think that's great. I love the idea of video. I love the map. I was just trying to think of the most effective way to have something that has real value and that does, but at $5,000, for a grouping of 4 or 5, it would take a long time to fill that map. So I just wondered if videos for the public meeting might be something that maybe get boring to have to show the same video every year, but maybe those are things as well. I just want to make sure that the content was controlled, so we don't end up having these 2-minute videos about something that, maybe isn't as informative as more general things, because I don't think people understand CPA. So it might be good in the beginning to sort of, broaden our reach, and then maybe get more specific as we go. No, that's all.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Any other thoughts? And I'd love thoughts too. And like, if folks want to, I would love to get a sense of if folks would like to move forward with this idea, and in what way do you want me to move forward? Right? Like, do we want to vote to potentially expend money and then start moving towards having this kind of project occur? Or is it like I don't know, Meg, I want to sit on it. Let's talk about it again in January or March. Yeah, Michael.
Madam Chairman, I would prefer we talk about it in April or May, towards the end of the fiscal year. I just think having, I think we're cutting it a little bit too close in the admin money. We've got $8,600 now. And that's not much to get us through to July 31st. So if we had this discussion in April or May or June, I'd be more inclined to give it a closer look. But I don't like to have $4,000 or $5,000 left at this point in the ball game in the administration budget. I think we're cutting it a little bit too close. If we waited several months till we got to the end of the fiscal year and we looked at it and said, yeah, we could right now in this stage of the ball game, yeah, we're good. We can do that. But I don't like spending. I think we're cutting it too close.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've projected every cost out, right, including Amy's salary and Andrew's money. Like I think we've projected the entire budget out, right, and found $8,600 left. You're right that it is cutting it a little bit close, and it's not a huge buffer there. But I do think it's a decent projected budget. And certainly in past years, we've always rolled a significant amount of admin money over.
Well, Madam Chairman, it doesn't mean we have to do it again to roll it over, but I'm saying the estimates are exactly that. They're estimates. Sometimes estimates go wrong. And if something should come up and we need, $6,000 right away for whatever reason, we don't have it. So as I said, I prefer to talk about this in May or June when we kind of get a clear sense that we can make it to the finish line and we got the money to do it. I think we're cutting it a little bit too close.
Question, and I guess I'm not sure about the answer. Do we have to expend admin funds before July 1, before they roll over?
No, we don't have to spend anything.
No, I just mean like if we don't, like for example, we could vote on it in June, but I think it would then apply to the next budget. I don't think it would come out of this year's money because I don't know if someone could do the work that fast. And I think admin is not like a project where you can then encumber funds for a while, right? I think you have to spend it within the fiscal year of that year.
It will roll over into the revolving budget project, and then a new 5% will be taken based on the collection from the current fiscal year, projected.
Okay, I just want to make sure my timeline is set in my mind, right, around like, what does this look like? John?
Yep, I love the idea of the map. I think it's a great way to get the message out as time goes on. Clearly, continue to add to that. My question, Megan, is you explored just one proposal right now or one bid, whether or not we should. And I know this is time sensitive to some folks, but I think we probably would be better off if we had probably more than one proposal, just so we're not, being accused of not having kind of an open process. That's all, for transparency reasons. And so maybe it'd be worth getting, and that's a way to kind of test the whole project out cost-wise and say, look, if we have 2 or 3 bids, then we can talk about it and vote on what would be the best way to go, perhaps. Just a thought.
Okay, that's reasonable. Does that match what everyone's thinking?
Not a bad idea.
Happy to do that if folks want me to. Amy?
Oh, I just wanted to mention, I thought that Marco made a really great point about making sure that the video, especially if it is, rather costly, that it's something that's enduring. But I do think there are ways of doing that. Like, even if it's a past project, it still shows work that the CPA accomplished. But you can also be sure that it includes a link to the website and say something about, if you want to find out about current projects, here's where you go, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Or just we can also specify within videos, what does it mean to be a historic project? What does it mean to be eligible for historic funding? Right. Okay. Mary, one more thought.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for having done that. It seems like we've just learned a lot in a short amount of time as to what we can expect from such a proposal. And at last meeting, we did say that we all seem to be pretty enthusiastic about getting something like this done. So again, thank you for looking into it, and let's hope that we can actually get something done before the money rolls over into next year's budget. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I have sticker shock with everything, right? Like I'm a homeowner. Nothing ever costs what I think it should cost. So, and I think it's a good idea to go get more proposals and get a sense of you know, is this market rate? Is there, I don't know. I don't want to always go with the cheapest proposal, right? I want to make sure that if we're going to spend any money at all, it's going to be on something that we feel really good about and that we feel proud of, and that represents our city and our committee's work really well. So whatever that point is, I think that it's important to think about financially how much something costs, but I also think it's important too to think about who we work with, right, and who represents me. When I asked around, I particularly liked that this, you know, like a Holyoke guy. You know, like I think it's really good if taxpayer money can also go to people who are, you know, Holyoke business owners, right, or entrepreneurs. So I like that lens too. And also someone, I think it's good if someone who really knows our community well is also helping to figure out how to interpret how we're sharing information about our community. So I have a couple of thoughts in my mind around criteria that aren't just financial, around like why we would want to pay someone to effectively tell our story, right? Is I want someone who really knows how to tell a story, and can tell it well and with fidelity. So yeah, we also have to, I think, make sure that we can hire someone that can tell a story in English and Spanish. It's gotta be both, right? I feel very strongly about that. I don't want to hire someone to throw something together that's not quality, and I don't want to hire someone that doesn't come together, right? Like I want to be integrative, and I want it to make sure that it can be in both English and Spanish, so it's really gonna reach the community. So. Amy, last thought, and then we're going to
sorry. I know this is obviously the committee's decision, and I completely understand that. I just wanted to mention that we did learn from the survey results that there are people who don't quite understand CPA that well, or what makes a project eligible, and also just a lot of people, you know, just don't really join these meetings or come to things. So there's a real need to get out the publicity, you know, to educate people about this. So that's like one thing that does sort of point towards having, you know, a really good tool like that. And just the other thing is that since it is, you know, through the city, we are supposed to find 3 quotes.
Oh.
Yeah, if it's over a certain amount of money. But yes,
Actually,
Amy, I think it's a good best practice for sure.
Well, no, actually, it's for any city project. You're supposed to try to find 3, even if you just try. It's just that you don't have to do prevailing wages or those other things.
Got it. Okay. So we are going to talk really briefly about the process for reviewing and voting on FY22 projects. And then we're going to jump into reviewing the emergency and small grants applications that we have in front of us right now. So I sent everybody the preservation plan that we have that was crafted in 2018. And I had asked folks, you know, go ahead and look at those pages again from 23 to 29, just to refresh your memory on what the priorities are that were, you know, named in that 2018 document. And I have some thoughts around how we can look at projects this year. You know, every year in some ways it gets harder because we have so many good projects that are coming to us, and there's always going to be more asks than we have funding for. So in terms of timeline, we have in January, I think that we're going to have one meeting, which our typical meeting would be January 12th. It would be the second Wednesday of the month. And, you know, at that meeting, we can dive more into talking about how we could use this potential scoring guide, and how we can use the priorities to figure out how we could score projects and have that discussion. But I think I would like us to experiment with it, which I know we haven't done in the past. It's been more, you know, a person throwing out a motion, right? And we discuss that motion on its merits. And there's a few other CPCs that instead use a process where they have a scoring guide and folks look at the applications ahead of time and score them. And then when you meet, you say, well, in this meeting, we're going to talk about the following 4 applications. Everyone come having pre-scored them. And in fact, usually they use some sort of electronic way of collecting it ahead of time. So the staffer can present at the beginning of the conversation, here's how this project has been scored so far by everybody in the committee, right? As a way to launch the conversation as they're thinking about which projects to fund and which ones not to, and why. So I sent that scoring guide out for folks to look at. We'll spend some more time looking at it when we meet in January. The second piece I wanted to talk about is what that public presentations meeting looks like. So we have the option to meet virtually, but we also have the option to have a hybrid meeting. So I was talking to Eileen McGinnis up at the Senior Center. It's a place we've used in the past. It is, in the Pine Street neighborhood, and it has a lot of space, which could be really good in terms of folks feeling comfortable in that space, being able to spread out. And I wanted to ask what folks thought about that. Last year we did everything virtually, right? Like fully virtually. This year we have the option to do that too, if that's what the committee wants. We also have the option to do it in person or to do a hybrid. I think it makes sense to do, if we're going to do an in-person element, to do something in hybrid, right? So that we can have some folks Zoom in if they want to. So we can still have a virtual stream of the event that Amy can run. And, she can monitor the chat and figure that piece out, as we also have this in-person component. But I wondered what folks thought about the value of having a hybrid meeting. So we're moving more back to the public meeting happening in the public.
Good idea.
I know we've gone to hybrid format with the planning board meetings, and some people who Zoom in and others are there in the the meeting room. So I personally like a hybrid meeting. I probably, like most people, I've been so zoomed out the past 2 years. It's a step closer to normalcy, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're sensitive to other folks that may have reservations. We're not forcing it on anybody.
Madam Chairman, I agree with John. I think a hybrid is the way to go. So if you choose to go, you can. If you choose to stay at home, you can. That's the way to go, I think, Madam Chairman.
Okay. Marco or Mary, anything you want to add?
I agree. I think it's a great idea, the hybrid.
Okay.
Yeah, I do too. I'm a little bit worried about, Omicron and what's going on, but, every once in a while you hear about, events that spreader events, but I think the hybrid works.
Okay. So I'm hearing that you guys want me to go ahead and continue that conversation with Amy and Eileen McGinnis at the Senior Center. Their proposed date that they have available is Thursday, January 27th from 6 to 8. I did look on the Holyoke City calendar and I didn't see any conflicts. Is there anyone that would have a conflict or a reason to think that wouldn't be a good date to tell the applicants that's the day they're doing the presentations on?
Did you say 27 or 22nd?
27th, the last
Okay.
Thursday. And that had to do with their availability at the Senior Center for when they have, event staffing effectively available. Is that a date okay for folks?
I might have a Conservation Commission meeting. Let me see. Is that the 4th? Well, I suppose, I guess, yeah, wait a minute.
Yeah, that's the 4th Thursday, Mary, of the month.
So that is a Conservation Commission meeting. I don't know. I'm sure I could miss one. So I guess
What you could do is you could come to our meeting in person and you could Zoom in for our meeting to conservation and multitask.
Oh, that's a great idea, John. Thank you. No.
Okay, are there any other thoughts around the date or the place? Sorry, Mary, yes.
I have a question about it though. So how does that work? we would be in the room. It would be similar when I see it on the city council. They're spread out, and then they have the public is there. Is that the way we're going to do it too? In other words, and then there are also people that are on Zoom. So is that how we would be doing?
The senior center has a hybrid capability, like that they are set up for that. I just don't know.
We'd have to work with, I mean, it would be you and me and us talking to Holyoke Media to try to put it together. And I think what I'm hearing is go forward with trying to make this happen, and let's go figure out the logistics.
Yeah, and one thought too on it.
Because I don't know what they are yet.
Yeah. One thought too on this, the city of Holyoke has done hybrid for city council and for boards. So clearly,
yeah,
there's that capability somewhere for us.
Right, but I don't know if they have that at the senior center, but
I don't know either.
I think there was some limit about internet, at least in the past, but that could have changed.
Yeah.
The other thing is actually it's good that it's late at the end of January, because we have a requirement to publicize this in 2 newspapers starting 2 weeks beforehand. You know, has to be a notice in the newspaper, and then 1 week beforehand, according to the CPA law.
Okay.
Also, I think it would be great if there could be a little introduction to what CPA is, and just some conversation about what are CPA priorities, because that's really usually the purpose of these public meetings, the annual public meeting anyway.
And that would be our only January meeting, or would we also meet at some other time?
So our regular January meeting would be January 12th, the Wednesday. And then our public presentations would be the 27th. Okay. Let's get into the Lady Liberty statue and the Parks and Rec small grant application. So we have 2 applications to consider tonight. One is the Lady Liberty statue for $60,000. This is alongside a state match, or a near state match of $55,000 to be able to put together a complete restoration of the statue. Mike, do you want to speak a little bit more about the project?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Basically, as I mentioned before, it's in the application. Basically, through the efforts of our state senator John Vilas, he was able to obtain for us $50,000. The budgeted amount to do the complete restoration is $110,000. So in one fell swoop, we've got it half paid for. The drawback is we need to spend it in FY22. So the clock is ticking. So that's why it's the emergency situation. Is I need to get the $60,000 that I can ask Mike Sullivan to guide it through the council and approve as quickly as possible, and then get it out to purchasing and to see if we can meet that very aggressive timetable. But we run the risk of not doing anything, of losing the $50,000 and going back to the state of Massachusetts, and there's no guarantee we'll get it back. Madam Chairman and my fellow committee members, the project of restoring Lady Liberty is very popular. The people I spoke to are very behind it quite a bit. And the fact that we could lose $50,000, which is almost half the budget, if we don't do anything, necessitates this emergency application, that we have to do it. And if we get to $60,000, I can then move it forward as quickly can be, and see if we can get it done for this fiscal year. That's why the emergency, it really is an emergency to get the thing done, and through the efforts of John Vilas, getting us to $50,000 and running the risk of losing it. It necessitates this application. So that's why I'm asking for $60,000. I did approach the fellow from the Holyoke, the young man, Brian Murphy, I think is his name. And I asked him if there's any, if there's anything in the Massachusetts Historical Society that we could go to and apply for funds. He says, yes, Mike, there is, but you're going to have to wait 2 years at a minimum before you get it. He says, the only thing I could do is go to the CPA and ask for the funds if you need them that quickly. Mm-hmm. I then talked to Bob Parrott and I said, could these funds be taken from community development funds? And he said, absolutely, it is an eligible fund, but you're going to wait 2 years. In fact, the city of Holyoke hasn't even gotten their funds from last year. So he said, the only place that you can get that money that quickly is the CPC. And I did write to several banks in the area, and I got no reply. Probably, I don't know, maybe it's me, I don't know. But in the event, I didn't get a reply. And so now I'm
You've
here.
worked hard on this project, Mike. You've done a lot of outreach, which I appreciate. I do. It was also in the news, which I think I forwarded to at some point. So there's been a lot of really good sort of momentum around this project, which is great. And it's really good to see the state come forward with funding to move the project forward.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So that's why I'm here asking for your support and award the $60,000 to the City of Holyoke War Memorial Commission. And it would go into the same account that the treasurer for the $50,000, which give us a total of $110,000. And that would be perfect. Then we can really take off.
Mary, I saw your hand up.
Just wondering, when is the earliest we can vote on this?
Now.
Well, Mary, I'd like to do it now because the clock is ticking, and every day is a day lost, quite frankly.
Yeah, because it became in as an emergency application, we're able to vote on it now.
Okay.
Yeah, the contract.
Sorry.
I just want to clarify, because I think it's right. It's 60,000, Michael, that you need. The agenda says 55, but we're voting on 60, right?
Yeah, my apology on that.
That's okay.
I don't know why. I had a version that had my notes and then a version that went to the city, and I think I changed it in my notes and it didn't make it on there. Yes, Amy.
Yeah, I think this project sounds really great. I'm just wondering, because Chris Sims is not here, and it seems like he's the one who's going to have to manage this. And sometimes, communication's been a little tricky with Chris. So, I mean, is he going to be managing it, or are you going to be managing it, Mike?
I will manage it, but I will be doing it also with the Holyoke Park and Rec Commission. They voted to be our understudy as the people that actually sit at City Hall, that have a phone and a staff and a history and a capability to doing projects. So they are a co-applicant. And I made a presentation to the Park and Rec Commission, and they agreed to be the co-applicant and to help get this process even quicker. It's not going to be relying on Chris. It'll be probably myself working with Park and Rec folks to move it along. But
Bob Parent is also on the was named as the mayor, as the person that would be the liaison.
Absolutely. Bob Parent is behind it 100%, and he'll be there to guide and direct as needed.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to fund the $60,000 for the Lady Liberty statue. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? It's a project we all know well, especially because we funded the study and its restoration. Right, it's a no-brainer for me. Okay.
I agree.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you for the committee members. Appreciate it very much.
Michael, thank you. We all know you've been
thank you.
working very, very hard at this project, and certainly it's going to be great to see come to fruition. It's a very
Thank you.
to the city.
Thank you, John, and guys, thank you. We're hoping that it gets done. And as I said before, wouldn't it be a great July 4th celebration to be at Veterans Park in the unveiling of the new statue, or the restored statue? What a great way to celebrate 4th of July.
Thank you for all you did.
Yes, Mike, thank you. So we have a second application to consider. Small grants. It's $3,000 for a bronze plaque. I just put the document in the chat if anyone wants to click on it and look at the original application.
That's the Miriam Miranda thing, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm just looking for that document now so I can share screen. Okay. So this is a small grant application. Description: the Holyoke Parks and Recreation Department would like to purchase a bronze tablet to attach to a boulder at Eli Park in honor of Miriam Miranda, for whom the basketball court is dedicated to. This falls underneath open rec as a category. The amount is $3,000, and a quote for the tablet has been submitted. And this is a letter in support from Teresa Shepard, the director of Parks and Rec, determining that they own this land, and that the Public Works and Parks Division will be responsible for park maintenance. And then they also put forward this invoice effectively from Din Brothers to be able to create this and attach it for a total here of $2,450. So it's up to $3,000 for being able to create this tablet and then affix it.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? I want to admit that I do not know Eli Park well. And I was someone who I would never got to meet Miriam Miranda. So I was reading the letter over to sort of better understand the plaque. And there was a really great letter that was submitted to us from Terry Shepard along with the application that just said a little bit about Miriam that I wanted to read out loud. Such as on June 29th, 2019, Mayor Alex Morris officially dedicated the newly constructed basketball court at Eli Park in honor of the late Miriam Miranda. Miriam Miranda's life was tragically cut short several years ago by a terrible act of violence in the city of Holyoke. Miriam Miranda touched the lives of countless children and adults, as she was a fabulous role model to all. Her children, as well as the Flats neighborhood community, continue to actively honor her legacy. Excluding the pandemic in 2020, her children have sponsored a yearly Stop the Violence basketball tournament for hundreds of children to enjoy and compete in several sporting events free of charge to honor their mother. During the 2019 dedication ceremony, this tournament occurred at its new home, the Miriam Miranda Courts at Eli Park. So this is in honor of her life and her contributions to the community. I don't know if there's anyone else that wants to say anything about Miriam Miranda or just about the project as a whole.
I used to work with that lady like years ago. She used to work at the Holyoke Medical Center. Great person.
I wish I'd gotten to meet her. The letter thinking. A really great project. Okay.
It seems like a great cause.
In Holyoke, we say Ely.
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 Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ely Park.
I don't know why, but we always have called it Ely Park.
Park, yeah. Some the flats.
Did we have a first and second on this? I thought we did. So we just need to vote. Okay.
Yeah. Any more discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay. Nice work, everybody. Last piece is the Jackson Street CPC Build Day. So Saturday, December 18th, which is in 10 days. So not this Saturday, but next Saturday from 8:30 to 3:30. I talked to them yesterday and they are in the process of building the frame. So we would literally be building the frame of the house or helping to. And lunch will be provided. It's at 113 Jackson Street. We get t-shirts. So anyone that goes just has to give me their t-shirt size ahead of time so I can make sure that you have a t-shirt that's, mildly or somewhat near your size. I say that because as a very small person, there's no way that they have a child's large that they will give me. So whatever t-shirt they provide, I will be swimming in it as a dress or looking like I'm wearing my husband's t-shirt. All volunteers need to complete an electronic waiver ahead of time and be at least 18 years of age. Masks are optional because we're doing outside work, although they are encouraged if folks want to wear them. I say make sure you bring your own water bottle and snacks, and just to check the weather and wear layers and gloves and come prepared for whatever the weather shows. And I just need to give them a firm head count by the end of the week. So I'm going to email back out those details to the group, and then just ask that everybody check in with me to let me know if you can attend. I think it'd be great for us to have a really good showing. They're getting a crew together, right? For expecting us to show up. So if anyone can attend, please let me know. Hopefully folks can stay the whole day. If you can't do the whole day, but can do part of the day, let me know. And I'll try to piece it together so there's a consistent team. And also don't forget that you're allowed to invite friends. You're allowed to invite family. A lot of the work that we do is slogging through the details and apologizing for open meeting violations and figuring out how to do motions and Robert's Rules of Order. So it's really, I don't know, I'm looking forward to having an opportunity to share with my family the work that we're doing in sort of a hands-on way. So feel free to invite your friends and family to come as well, and let me know so I know a good head count by Friday, so I can let Habitat for Humanity know how many of us to expect. Yes, Mary, any questions about bill day or anything else folks want to say?
Yes,
close?
you referred to an electronic waiver. Do we all have the link to that already?
No, I'm going to send out an email probably tomorrow morning that has the description, the info, and then the waiver.
Oh, good. Okay.
So I hope to see many of you there. And hopefully you'll drag along some of your significant others or family members so that I can thank them for letting them give so much of your time to this group. All right. I appreciate you all, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in January. So our next meeting is January 12th at 6 o'clock. And then I'll see you for the public presentations on the 27th. Woo!
Unfortunately, I'm not gonna be able to make that.
Oh, darn it.
Because the 12th is a really difficult day for me. My son's 1 year
Anniversary.
It's on Sunday, the 12th, and I am able to do that.
I hope you take care of yourself and your family, Francesca.
Yeah, I'm doing a candle lighting for him, and it's crazy because I don't want to cry, but it's crazy because the senior thing is close to where it happened. So, yeah.
Well, let us know too how we can be a part of your celebrations too.
I was trying to get something to, in memory of my child, but everywhere I went, it's like it was a blocker, because what happened to my son too was very devastating too. I'm trying to bring awareness for especially gun violence. He was only 15 years old. He was a baby, so it's sad how I hear about everything else but that, and I've been a part of Holyoke my whole life. I mean, so yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, Francesca.
That's terrible.
It's terrible.
Well, I hope that you'll let me know if there's a candle lighting that I can come to.
Yep. Let us know if there's a candlelight vigil.
Yeah, it'll be on the 12th from 3 to 5. I'm doing a photo shoot with my son's with a shirt with my son's picture on it, and a ribbon, orange ribbon that has, his name.
You said a candlelight vigil on the 12th from 3 to 6. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it's gonna be on the exact address. I know the name of the store, which is Manny's, is on Sargent and Walnut.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be there from 3 to 5.
So on Sargent and Walnut, near that corner.
It's actually on that corner.
What was your son's name, Francesca?
Jonas David Nunez.
Oh, so sorry.
Right here.
We appreciate you and you getting involved. Really do.
Actually, it's funny because I think Maribel,
She was working at the OBGYN that I went to when I was pregnant for my son.
That's true. I remember you. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm being crazy.
No, that's okay. That's understandable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You'll be in our prayers for sure.
Yes.
And maybe someday soon there will be a way that we can memorialize him too.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Thank you, all of you,
Thank
for
you.
being here and for bringing yourself here and for doing this work with me. I really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Megan. Thanks for all the
Thank
work
you,
you've done.
Megan.
Thank you all, commissioners.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you,
everybody.
Megan.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Do we need to officially close the meeting though, adjourn
Oh,
and
yes.
vote and do all
Oh,
that
yes.
stuff?
Need a motion? I'll make a motion, make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? All right. Thank you all. All right.
Okay,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.